Everybody, I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. I want to welcome you to this presentation on combating labor shortages with AI-powered automation presented by Gray Orange. One important reminder, there will be a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Now, labor shortages are quickly becoming a major issue for companies across the globe as workers become scarce due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, skills mismatch, and early retirement. Organizations have to become more flexible to meet the demands of their customers. Automation and technology can help bridge the labor gap during the peaks and valleys of business. So today, we're going to learn how an AI-powered warehouse automation platform can vastly increase productivity, decrease injuries, improve working conditions, and allow warehouse personnel to learn new skills. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Ravish Sharma is Vice President of Gray Matter Product Management with Gray Orange. Ravish is responsible for delivering innovative supply chain products that help clients achieve operational efficiencies and predictability in fulfillment. He has extensive expertise in product development for desktop, mobile, and cloud products, with prior experience at firms including Morgan Stanley and Adobe Systems. Siddharth Malhotra is Associate Director of Product Management with Gray Orange. Sid is a product management and supply chain technology professional. He's a lead product owner in the Gray Orange Ranger Certified Network, a curated marketplace of fulfillment automation technologies that enable futuristic and resilient supply chains. Sid has extensive leadership, product ownership, and product execution experience across supply chain automation, industrial robotics, operational performance improvement, and management consulting. And Brian Reinhardt is Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Solutions with Robotics. Brian has nearly 15 years of experience designing and implementing solutions for global logistics, supply chain, warehouse, and storage customers. Recognized as an industry expert in warehousing operations, software, and automation applications, he's partnered with and managed accounts across the full spectrum of customers, from startup organizations to Fortune 50 companies. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Siddharth Malhotra. Sid, take it away.
Thanks, Bob, and welcome everyone. At the outset of our discussion, we would just like to reflect and acknowledge that over the past 3 to 5 years, intelligent warehouse automation that is powered by decision science has become such an important boardroom discussion as opposed to just being a fringe cost lever, right? And it's not hard to see why. The warehousing sector employment, as we see on our screens, has grown more than 10 times in the past decade. And despite this increase, the number of vacancies in this sector has grown nearly 5 times. 3.5x of that has just come in the past 3 years, right? And let's just pause and absorb that. So clearly, manual operations are not able to keep up with the demands of modern day fulfillment. Add to that the high turnover rate in the sector. All of it just reiterates that intelligent automation is the answer for retailers to gain competitive advantage and retain their customers' loyalty. Ravish and Brian, would like to hear from your thoughts as well from this, from your vantage point. Would you agree?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Sid, and I think that's a really good high-level problem statement there, right? I think what's interesting about this one to me is that the macro level data matches up with the micro level data, which matches up with kind of anecdotal, understanding when you actually talk to people in the warehouses. So often when you're talking about a problem, the data and the experience may not line up, and we see that across all walks of life. But when it comes to the labor shortage in our industry, this is one that no matter who you talk to, no matter what type of company they're running, no matter what part of the country they're in, they're feeling this burden. And so I really think what's more evident than ever is that the problem is clear. And so now we all need to work towards solving it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, when you talk about that problem, how does it impact the warehouse? I think most of the focus is inside the four walls, right? Well, we need operators to put product on shelves. We need operators to get product off shelves, put it in a box, get it in a trailer, right? And so that labor constraint, it affects, the number of movements, the amount of volume, the types of products that you can handle within a warehouse. And that's very tangible. You can touch it, you can see it on a daily basis from the operator all the way up to the boardroom executive. But there's also unforeseen impacts that this labor shortage is having on the market too. And it's really not just how the warehouse operates, but it's also where the warehouse operates. And, if you talk to folks in the network planning side of the business, some of the larger consultants or even in-house network associates, they're going to tell you that typically when you plan a network, you want to find a location to minimize a couple things. One, your freight, right? Where are our buyers? Where can we place that DC to kind of minimize the amount of travel time? But also our real estate investment. As you get closer to the various metros where those buyers are, your real estate costs go up substantially. And so it's kind of a blend that you try to find between the two. The problem is if you go too far out of that kind of that population center, now you're only exacerbating the labor issue. And so as we try to kind of lay out our network, there's a new factor going in from just real estate cost and freight cost, and that's labor availability. And what that means is that if you have a DC or a network of DCs reliant on labor, you have less flexibility, less mobility in your planning. Should you ever have to move, should you have to expand, should you have to consolidate, you're going to have less options at your disposal for making those decisions. And so by removing the labor, not only does it solve all those problems inside the warehouse that we're going to address, but it really opens up more availability for your network as a whole. And so, when we talk about those problems inside of the warehouse, what are kind of the most common functions that we can automate these days? And really over the last 10, 20, 30 years, automation has become more and more prevalent, more reliable, more cost effective. It initially started as, how do we get a box or a product from point A to point B? Okay, let's use a conveyor. Then it was, well, what if, that conveyor doesn't have to be bolted to the floor? Okay, a robot. And before you know it, the expansion and evolution of automation has really solved a lot of the problems in the warehouse. But some of the key ones that I think you can look towards automation to remove that labor burden is really any type of bulk movements. So what are we doing at large scale that is physically cumbersome, right? Which really makes labor difficult, creates high turnovers for that position, and repetitiveness. What is being done over and over and over again? Repetitiveness will set up the opportunity for automation because it's easier to design to and implement to. And some of the most repetitive tasks in a warehouse are things around picking, replenishment, put away, storage, stocking, cycle counting, or QC and auditing. All of those functions, in a non-automated environment are simply solved by throwing labor at it. And so what I want you to do is think about, okay, well, if we just have an operator doing the same thing over and over again, how can we automate it? What types of automation can we deploy? And again, you want to look at kind of, again, this physically cumbersome tasks and then the repetitive ones.
And I think you touched a great point there. I mean, if you think about it, coincidentally, these repetitive and cumbersome tasks, which are, the absolute hotbeds of automation, are exactly those which are causing employee dissatisfaction in the first place and making warehousing, not an aspirational job, which is why, we are seeing the gap not being filled, even though the number of employees in the sector may be, increasing, right?
And turnover, it's just
absolutely, yeah.
When you have high turnover, you're constantly playing from behind. It's always a catch-up mentality to keep these facilities operated. And then that creates an adverse effect where the employees feeling the burden of that catch-up mentality tend to leave, which exacerbates your turnover issue, right? It's a catch-22 chicken or the egg type situation. And, a lot of folks are stuck in that cycle for years on end as they see their volumes go up and the reliance and the burden and the pressure that are being put on these DCs. And so, you're looking for kind of a get out of jail free card or a magic wand to solve these issues.
Right. And to add to that, all this is again the costs of turnover are multiplied by all the hidden costs of ramping up new employees. It's not just the employees you lose and the throughput which you may lose, with reduced workforce. It's also the ramp up, which is also a cost to the warehouses, and that just adds up. And all these hidden costs are difficult to pin down. It's just, like you said in the first page, that it's just the problem is so stark and it's in front of us. It's just how we find the right solution now to address this.
And with all of this going on, guys, let's not underestimate the customer expectations. The same day delivery, 2-hour delivery. That's unbeatable without automation and without taking care of. And the only thing that can compensate for labor shortages is automation.
We used to say that the common colloquialism, 10 years ago was better, faster, cheaper, pick two, right? We can get your products to you at a higher quality, a higher accuracy, or, same day, next day, but we may have to charge a premium, right? I think the market has said, nope, we want all three. And if you don't do it, you're going to go out of business. And we've seen a lot of large, too big to fail companies fall trap to that. And, as we talk about, as the slide says there, as we reimagine, how do we do this? How do we check all three of those boxes simultaneously? What I would encourage folks to do is don't constrain your thought process to what you've seen traditionally. When we talk about kind of AI or the brains of a system, there are significant advances being made there today. And I know we're going to spend some time on that later. I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it's important because a lot of tasks that can be automated already are. And I think people are like, okay, great. You're talking about automating a picking operation. I know how to do that. But what I would say is think about even those kind of value add or operator intensive tasks that require decision making or, some type of, what I would call advanced functionality. We're on the cusp of being able to automate those two as an industry. And I think, we'll touch on some of that today, but that's what's really exciting is that a reimagining process is going through its own evolution. And, if you're running a warehouse, don't constrain yourself to what the current market holds.
And that kind of brings us to the point that what is the industry doing about this, right? The industry is definitely rapidly innovating to keep up. And for the retailer who's in the market for buying automation, it can get confusing. So a quick glance at the spectrum of robotic solutions in front of us shows that at one end, we have the manual floor picking with low productivities, although with minimal cost and infrastructure impact on the warehouse itself. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have a full-blown ASRS system that gives a high productivity for sure, but it comes at the heavy expense of inflexible and costly fixed infrastructure. Now, in the middle lies modern day fulfillment solutions in the form of person-to-goods cobots, goods-to-person AMRs or AGVs, which provide a very fantastic balance between throughput, cost competitiveness, and also flexibility. And no doubt, these very solutions have become the technologies of choice for modern day fulfillment. Brian, I'm sure you would also agree to this, and would love to pick your brain on what you think about this sweet spot that is kind of becoming the go-to solution for most advanced warehouse solutions these days.
Yeah, I think you use the phrase sweet spot there, and I always like that term, and I agree with it. Right, it's another one I'll use a lot when I'm talking to folks is the Goldilocks zone. Right. Do you remember that old little bedtime story where no, floor and module picking is too simple. Grid and mini load ASRS is too rigid. Mobile technology that fits just right. I think really the value add and kind of the game changing functionality of those technologies is the flexibility they provide. And so when you look at kind of the decision criteria for how do you automate, you want to look at speed, right? Our UPH there. How quickly can we get product into our system and out the door? That's going to be the key metric that ultimately has the largest impact on labor. Operators become more efficient. they can get more product in and out the door, larger UPHs, whatever your unit of measurement is, with the assistance of automation. And so, as we try to combat the labor shortage, that's going to be a key function. But what you don't want to do is sacrifice other areas of the warehouse in lieu of that search. And so other areas would be things like density, right? We want to make the strongest use of our footprint, and flexibility. We want to be able to adjust as our business changes or grows. And so what used to be maybe just 1 or 2 impact factors on a decision now have 4, 5, or 6. And for customers, I think you're going to want to prioritize them, rank them, have a weighted scale of some sort. But no longer are you constrained to just one, right? We got to get faster. You can really hit all 3 simultaneously.
Yeah, and Brian, also the adaptability a little bit. So as the demand changes, as your focus changes from, say, e-commerce to being omni-channel, I think the center 3 provide an opportunity to very conveniently adapt to these changing needs.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about kind of change management, yeah, a large scale business like that, say you want to now roll your e-com through your retail facility to go omni, as you mentioned. What if, you're a 3PL and you onboard a new customer that completely throws your facility Pareto out the window, right? You were a nice 80-20, all of a sudden you're a flat, or you're an even steeper 90-10. What do you do? Can the automation handle it? And I do think kind of those 3 in the middle, they've been designed, they've been geared and deployed to handle those types of change management scenarios, which isn't to say that other technologies can't. They certainly can. But I think the key is, how painful is it when that happens, right? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Every technology can get goods out the door. Every can handle change. The question is, how easily and inexpensively can we do it? And so I think, this is just kind of a little, I love my Venn diagrams. Everyone who's ever met me thinks, probably tell you I'm obsessed with Venn diagrams. But I think this one kind of clearly shows what we're trying to articulate about that middle ground, right? I really want folks to start thinking about flexibility. And, flexibility is tough. In our world, everybody's very black and white. We're a technical minded world. And so you can easily see density. Okay, I can fit so many products in this XY footprint, and that's my density. You can see speed. This operator that was getting 60 units per hour out the door is now getting 250. They're very objective measurements. Flexibility is a little bit more subjective. It requires some unique thought exercises. It requires putting ourselves in an uncomfortable position of what if. And it's also very hard to quantify from a financial or an ROI perspective. But that doesn't mean it's not as important as the other 2, strictly due to that kind of change management that we talked about, Ravish. And so as you look at, some of those more traditional technologies that we were showing on the left side of the previous chart, those are going to be able to get some decent densities. They're going to have a little bit of flexibility to them, but they're relatively slow and labor intensive. As we try to speed them up a little bit, we can add automation to make the operator more efficient. We can deploy quickly, right, with some of our new AMR technology or traditional AGV technology, but they're still constrained by the operator's height or the operator's ability to do certain things. So now we're not maximizing our density. If we make a density and speed flexible play, most technologies in the market are relatively rigid. A lot of facility infrastructure upgrades, a lot of investment in that building just to get the situation correct for them. And so, again, like I talked about, what we want to try to do is find that sweet spot, that middle zone where we are pulling maybe not the best density, but close. Maybe not the fastest, but close. But now we've brought in the element of flexibility, which long-term, due to that change management, should save you substantial money.
Okay, all right. So we've been talking about labor shortage, but alongside labor shortage, there is one more aspect, a couple of aspects that we need to look at and understand better. So labor shortage is an outcome of many factors, but at the same time, worker safety and satisfaction of the workers are 2 really, really important factors, and they affect retention. And to solve for improved retention, one has to think of what is leading to not retaining workers in today's world, when there are warehouses which are moving towards automation, and those warehouses offer better safety, improved working conditions, less risk of falling ill, less fatigue, etc. All of that, they are definitely going to be more attractive places for labor to work at compared to other places which do not offer the similar conditions. And hence, now is the time when you start to invest into automation so that you create those favorable conditions in adverse conditions where labor is falling short. So, this is the time when this is the time to actually start looking at automation as a competitive advantage.
Yeah, if I may, there's a lot of research around how do operators, how does a warehouse employee feel about automation? And it's a pretty strong consensus that it's received positively. And there's a couple reasons, right? I think, your knack instinct is, oh, well, it might cost me a job. But as we all know, with the rate that we're growing and the rate and the pressure being put on these DCs and the lack of labor available, that's really not what it's doing. It's actually, like Ravish said, creating a more conducive and long-term environment for those operators. Accenture Research had a poll recently, and the number one factor for worker optimism in the warehouse is automation. And over 60% of respondents said they view automation positively. It shows that the company cares about the warehouse. Historically, warehousing was a loss leader. It was a means to an end. Companies ran their distribution network saying, get product out the door and, don't make a fuss about it. And then kind of Walmart and Amazon came along and showed that actually it can be a value add. It can be a profit center if you do it correctly. And so I think by kind of revisioning that inside the warehouse, companies have shown they're willing to invest in it, not just for the long-term business health, but also for their employee satisfaction as well.
And it's not just an intangible benefit, right? So much of this is very tangible. Even if you leave aside the fact that your employees are happy, the sheer amount of the employee retention momentum which you will create, and the amount of OSHA claims which you will be able to, avoidable OSHA claims which you will be able to navigate around, it all brings, it all adds to your business case, right? Ultimately. So it's worker safety and worker satisfaction. It's not an intangible afterthought, when you, decide to go in your automation journey.
Okay. All right. So there are a variety of systems that exist out there which can allow you to run your operations. I see them in three categories. The first one is which is completely manual, like we have in the warehouses where, there is a WMS, there are paper slips, and the operators are handed over paper slips to walk into the aisles and pick items. Then there are other ones which offer automation, which can generate big tasks, etc. But even there, given the scale of automation, the decision making is still manual. And then there is a third category of automation solutions which are I call them intelligent, because they start to take decisions on behalf of humans by looking at a lot of data. And those decisions are intelligent decisions to lead to optimization of operations. So they also take away the need to analyze a lot of data, to crunch a lot of data, to decide to make decisions timely, whereas these systems can actually take care of these decisions intelligently and at the right time. And as the quantum of data that gets generated through operations increases, it becomes humanly impossible for somebody to take these decisions, and hence these AI-enabled systems help in taking those decisions. And so these systems can take decisions such as auto prioritization, such as inventory replenishment, such as deciding which inventories are, which SKUs are the most popular SKUs. In fact, they also can manage SLAs better than a human decision can. And by the way, every decision that gets delayed because of human factor actually ends up costing to the business. So today is the time when today is the time of systems which are leveraging artificial intelligence at the core to make these decisions to provide the best optimization of operations.
I think if we look at these three terms, and many of you are likely familiar with these three, which I often like to call as a three-letter alphabet soup, of WMS, WES, and WCS. These are supposed to be three distinct software solutions that manage different aspects of warehouse operations, right? Now, there is some overlap of functionality, and there has been a recent trend towards some functions previously performed by the WMS, which is typically owned by the user or the retailer, which is using the automation, to be taken over by the WES due to the advancements and the real-time insights a WES kind of provides. So what was the need for a WES layer to come in the first place? Because we have the WMS, which is the upstream master system, which governs the WCS, which is closer to the robots or the automation, right? The WES layer arose to address the increasing complexity of modern fulfillment, which we've been talking about, and to fill the gaps that the WMS and the WCS could not manage effectively. And to name a few, these were related to multi-channel fulfillment, waveless order processing, which kind of frees the operations from sinusoidal peaks and troughs in throughput, dynamic order optimization, which Ravi spoke about, complex automation flows that need to be interconnected and which involve different types of automations rather than, a single type of robot, right? So the WES layer is kind of becoming more and more important as an orchestration platform. And if I have to just summarize, gone are the days when different parts of a supply chain can be treated in isolation, right? Consumer behavior is driving retailers to have all or majority of their SKUs present at all channels at all times. And hence, warehouses and supply chains have to be truly omnichannel, agile, and they have to be so in real time. So this can only be done by a connected and agile supply chain technology, which is orchestrated by a cloud-native WES layer, right? And which works without fixed rules, right? Brian did mention that it's not a wise decision to base your automation on fixed ABC prioritizations, right? Because tomorrow they can be thrown out of whack given the realities of business today. So adaptability in real time is one of the major drivers of this WES layer, which has become so important in the interplay between WMS and WCS today, right? Ravish, I mean, would you agree to this? And would love to hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. WES as the operations as the operations become more efficient with the introduction of more and more agents, and as these agents start to perform their tasks, and as these agents have to run in harmony and these agents might not all be the agents provided by one company. They could have all different interfaces, etc. Making all of that work synchronously, while in a software, it's easy to say that things work synchronously, etc. All of that, but in a warehouse, there is actual material movement happening. So the timely handshake between the various systems with material movement, all of that requires a very solid WES to be in there playing its part in moving the entire machinery between WMS and the WCS.
And this is really, I think this is the biggest unturned stone when folks are looking to gain efficiencies and really modernize their facility. Because again, you can walk to a trade show and see a robot or an element of automation and understand how it could help your facility. But things like predictive cycle counting, you can't see it, right? It's so much more difficult to conceptualize. And so, I always like to use cycle counting as an example. Let's say that you want to cycle count your A movers, every 2 weeks, your B movers monthly, and your C and D movers semi-annually. Traditionally, you would have to program in which SKU sets fall into which class. You would have to, put a tag on that SKU in your inventory management platform, and then your cycle count scheduler would run. With modern kind of smart AI-driven platforms like the ones we're describing here, it'll monitor SKU movement and velocity real time, proactively update those classes, and then adjust the cycle count scheduling accordingly. So it's managing the system for you versus you having to go in and kind of check reports and do it yourself. And I think that's, something like that is really difficult to convey. It's difficult to see. But if you do it, you're going to have more accurate inventory. You're going to save on the cost of all that planning that we talked about. And that's just one small element of the warehouse. Imagine deploying that over multiple technologies throughout a facility or an entire network, and you can really see your savings and efficiencies start to gain.
Okay, so what we are trying to show here is what attributes define an intelligent WES, a new age WES that we all have been talking about here. So the first one here is agnostic. It's actually being agnostic of the choice of agents. What that means is an intelligent and agnostic WES should be able to should be flexible enough to accommodate any kind of agent being produced by any company. It could be a High Robotics bot, it could be a Gray Orange bot, it could be somebody else's bot, but there should be complete freedom and flexibility to bring new hardware in without really having to do a lot of development activity on it. Then being intelligent, I briefly touched upon that, all the decision making that comes into managing the operations, the warehouse execution system should be able to take care of that. And for being able to do that, it should be able to leverage the state-of-the-art technologies, which help in making decisions real time. So while, for instance, the orders are being processed and the SKUs are being depleted, the SKU priorities or the velocities is being calculated in runtime, the replenishment requests are being created in runtime. All of that should be possible through a new age WES. Then coming to SaaS, warehousing space has been one which is now on the verge of catching up to where rest of the technology world is, where software is delivered as a service, whereas there is continuous value delivery happening. Software is being continuously upgraded with new features, safety features. It is becoming more robust. All of that is now happening in warehouse automation space as well. So now gone are the days when a WES has to be deployed on premise onto the servers, and then upgrading it requires the warehouse to go down for several hours. Now the new age WES actually do not require any downtime. They are being continuously upgraded, just as you don't ever really care about your iOS getting upgraded or any other application on your phone getting upgraded. Similar is very soon going to be the behavior of the WESs. Adaptive. So here, as the WESs, the new age WESs, start to take charge of more and more processes within warehouse, and as the productivity of each of those processes start to go up, there is a need for all of these processes to actually start to talk to each other, and any new age WES should be able to seamlessly provide for this integration within the existing processes that are being controlled by it, or whenever new processes come in within the confines of the four walls of a warehouse, or even beyond the confines of the four walls of a warehouse. So the WESs should be able to also work across multiple warehouses, should have visibility of the orders and inventory across multiple warehouses, so that they are able to direct the orders to the right centers. Talking about the convergence, so while being agnostic means that you can bring in any kind of hardware and run that with a WES, convergence means that all the decision making is being run centrally. It's not like there is one part of the WES running one part of the warehouse. For instance, let's say forward area is being managed by one part of the WES, sortation is being managed by the other part of the WES, reserve management, let's say, is managed by a third one. That, of course, in itself is a good place to be in compared to manual operations, but all these operations have to converge onto one WES, which is able to run all of these in a synchronized manner. So these are the important traits to look out for a capable WES.
Thanks very much for that, and thanks for that great presentation. I'd like to move us ahead very quickly to a brief panel discussion here before we start to take audience questions. And of course, we are continuing to solicit audience questions. Please continue to submit those questions to the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of them as you can, time allotting. So Sid, I'm just wondering though, what is the level of performance or the types of performance of robotic solutions today compared with manual picking operations? We've heard what the theory is. We've heard the benefits that they bring. How are they actually performing vis-a-vis the manual operations right now?
So thanks, Bob, for the question. I think it's a great question because, yeah, we've heard about the theory, and when we look at it practically, what it's actually impacting on ground, we typically find that the return on investment on robotic solutions vis-a-vis manual operations comes in terms of productivity of the operator, which is often quantified as units handled per hour, or UPH, right? By eliminating the most tedious and the time-consuming and error-prone activities of a human employee, be it walking, searching, sorting, right? Something like a goods-to-person automation boosts the productivity of an operator by up to 4 times, right? And at the same time, with technologies like vertical AMRs or ACRs, we are able to leverage inventory storage heights of up to 35 feet compared to 5 to 6 feet, in case of a human operator. And this saves the very precious and expensive real estate, which is getting more precious as we move towards the cities, right? Brian spoke about that. And the third aspect of performance improvement comes from what we touched in one of our discussion points, which is reduced errors in picking, which results in reduced returns, reduced OSHA claims with safe no-man zone operations, reduced wastage, reduced shrinkages, and overall worker satisfaction and reduced turnover costs, right? So, in a nutshell, it's a multifaceted performance improvement, which can be realized with the right robotic solution and the software orchestrator in place.
Yeah, great. So the value is already there. That's really exciting to hear. But at the same time, Brian, I'm wondering, technology doesn't stop moving. It's moving so fast and new stuff all the time. How quickly is this hardware changing? And what is the risk of if I were to purchase or acquire one of these systems that tomorrow it would be obsolete?
No, it's a fair question. I think the quickest way to avoid obsolescence is to understand who you're partnering with, what their product roadmap looks like, what their adaptability and flexibility kind of strategies are. Because anyone that tells you, oh, we're going to have the best mousetrap for the next decade is, guessing at best and telling you a fib at worst. And so, the truth is, what does evolution look like in your mind, ASRS manufacturer? Okay, if we want to go higher, if you develop that capability to go from the 35 feet Sid's talking about to the 50 feet, what does that look like for our system that's going in today? If we want to increase our throughput 50% over the next 10 years, but not today, what is your plan for that? Understanding that strategy, understanding their roadmap, and then building it into kind of your facility management plan and budget is a great way to avoid that obsolescence.
Again, the word flexibility comes. Ravish, go ahead. Do you have something to comment on that?
So Brian, at the same time, some commercial options like RAS in place of CAPEX, they actually make it a lot easier for you these safeguard against obsolescence because because it's not like you've invested and you're caged into that investment forever. You're paying as you're using the system, so that should help safeguarding against obsolescence.
Thanks. RAS, of course, RAAS, robots as a service. So we know. Anyway, let me stick with you for a moment, Ravish, and ask you about the implementation time of this technology. What are some of the lead times that are common for deployment, for ramp up, and for full-scale productivity?
Sure. So within the last couple of years, with the advent of newer technologies, I've seen a trend, which is actually a remarkable trend. So from, say, a goods to person system, which used to take 6 to 9 months of deployment, and then 3 to 4 months of ramp up and full scale and reaching up to full scale productivity, the entire cycle was about 9 to 12 months. This has come down to about 3 to 4 months of deployment and 1 to 2 months of overall ramp up to productivity. So that means it has come down to 4 to 6 months. That's like, the entire implementation and reaching up to full productivity that entire cycle has dropped by half. But now with person to goods technology coming in, this has actually come down to 3 to 4 weeks. So you don't need any infrastructure to be brought in. You just bring in the robots. You just configure them for your use case, and within 3 to 4 weeks, you're up and running. You're able to realize the productivity gains. Your operators are getting used to robots moving around. You can configure them based on your needs. All of that happens within 3 to 4 weeks. So overall, I think there is a dramatic drop in how you can start to experience the value of robotics automation without really incurring the CAPEX. And then you can take the crawl, walk, run approach. You start by having person to good solution. And then as you scale, you can start to make more investment, and you can start to also get more return.
Yeah. Thank you. In fact, I have an audience question that actually dovetails quite nicely with what we're talking about here in terms of implementation time. So I think at this point, I would like to bring the audience in and address some of the audience questions that have already come in. We're going to get to those, as I said before, as many as we can, time permitting. Speaking of implementation time, this questioner is asking specifically about the current range allotted for bugs and fixes. As we all know, has there ever been a major technology system that did not require some kind of fixes in terms of being implemented in the real world? As for a go live specifically for a WES, for a warehouse execution system today. So what about that? Ravish, is that something you want to deal with and address?
Yeah. So most of the modern technologies these days are being developed in an agile manner, which means they are following something like 2 weeks or 4 weeks of sprint. And they are, if they're following 2 weeks or 4 weeks of sprint, they are generally deploying after a couple of weeks of hardening, which means any bug that gets identified, and if it's not a critical bug, critical enough to bring down the operations, then most modern age WES are deploying these bugs into production at a delay of, say, about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, if it's a critical defect, then most modern day WSs are also able to deploy a hotfix immediately. And they're able to do so because of two reasons. One is most of the new age WESs are SaaS-based offerings, and these SaaS-based offerings are hosted on cloud, such as GCP and Azure, and all the deployment pipelines are already set up. So pushing any changes in an incremental fashion is much safer because the changes are small. And the second is that these deployment pipelines are also well equipped with testing infrastructure. So everything gets tested and deployed. So overall, I think, if you're depending on the severity depending on the quantum of change that's going in, it could be anywhere immediately to, say, about 4 to 6 weeks of delay.
Brian, could you address the hardware side of that question in terms of bringing their actual robots up to speed and any types of bugs or fixes or implementations to get them up to full productivity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ravish, I think, went over kind of the speed to market that this technology has really seen over the last couple of years. And I agree. I think it is an outstanding development. What used to be 18 months is 12. What used to be 12 is, 6, as Ravish said. Throughout that timeline, there is a commissioning phase, right? There's the physical installation of the hardware. There's the make it work element of it, if you will, testing, debugging, which ultimately leads to a go live where we're handling live orders, and then a ramp up to get to full system rate. Throughout that entire process, there is hardware debug, fixes, patches, whatever it may be. But I would also add that, once the system is live, stable, and the companies deploying it have left the job site, there's still an aftermarket service support and maintenance plan that all of us, in the industry offer to ensure that, when the unforeseen happens, you're there to take care of it. Most companies will offer that for a year or two at no charge after go live. You want to make sure the system's stable and mature. And then, an annual support, preventative maintenance, system monitoring type plan can always be discussed depending on the operation.
Sid, here's a question that's a very good one, I think, because it recognizes the fact that most technology implementations do not involve throwing out everything and putting in all new stuff. There's always some legacy technology that remains. This questioner is saying, how can we build on the automation we already have in place today?
Great question. I think let's look at this in two parts, depending on the maturity of the automation you have in place today, right? So firstly, if you are well into your journey of automation and you anticipate scaling up, it's important to choose flexible automation that involves minimal fixed infrastructure that is bolted to the ground, right? A great example of this is autonomous mobile robots, or AMRs. Flexibility of the AMR automation is the beauty of it is that it's easy to scale up. To get more throughput, you just add more robots on the existing field, and to get more inventory storage, you just add more storage aisles. All this without having the need to incur a long system downtime, right? And needless to say, scaling up becomes easier with subscription models, RaaS models, which we have spoken about earlier. In the second scenario, mature brownfield automation warehouses, right? Mature warehouses often need to induct different robotic technologies for different automating different applications, right? For example, you have a goods to person automation in place. You want to scale it up to sortation, interlogistics, or another, dock to stock application. And for scaling up such a complex system, it is important to deploy hardware agnostic software orchestrator like gray orange's gray matter that can be a single touch point to manage different systems and at the same time manage your end-to-end business KPIs through multi-agent orchestration, right? So in other words, with gray matter, you do not need to have multiple WMS integrations for additional automations for scaling up, right? It's all done through a single touch point, right? So these decisions are very important because everybody will need to scale up, and thus it's important to partner with the right automation player as early as possible in your automation journey itself.
Okay. This questioner is asking about, again, a very real world type of question. They're referring to client IT resource constraints or complexities that arise from integration from a client's existing WMS or ERP, enterprise resource planning, or custom platform, preventing possibly some of these automation solution projects from starting or going ahead smoothly. Can anyone talk about, the real world of constraints and complexities and how they might, impact what we're talking about today?
I can take that, Bob. So that is indeed, that's a good point and a question because that indeed happens. We also face it enough. But at the same time, what I'm starting to also see is that the upstream integrations are also becoming standardized with more and more work happening on the WES side. And as a result of that, there are now ready-made connectors available such that there is no new net development required on either side. So these connectors could be leveraged by the upstream systems like ERPs or WMSs. And then similarly, these connectors could also offer connectivity to a variety of WESs. So with these connectors coming in, the inertia to integrate should be a lot lesser, which means the fear that resides currently within the IT departments of these companies, I think that I would bet on seeing that becoming a lot lesser in very recent future.
That's good news for companies who have these giant ERP systems and they're wondering just how they can continue to connect and integrate with the new stuff that's coming down all the time. Well, that is great, guys. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. We have time for just one final question, and I'm going to direct it to Ravish. The question is as follows. How can I safeguard my operation against labor challenges without worrying about capital-intensive fixed automation?
Thanks, Bob, for directing that question to me. That's actually a really nice question, and it gives me an opportunity to summarize everything that we've discussed here in this forum. So, labor shortage is because of safety and health concerns that affects retention. So, if you want to improvise your retention, start to look at what solves for safety and health. And there is only one thing that solves for safety and health, and that's automation. Automation is employee friendly. And in current times, adopting automation has become a lot easier from CapEx standpoint, from technology standpoint. You can take, like I was mentioning earlier, crawl, walk, run approach. You can start with simpler automation, which gives you the experience of automation without really having to put in money. All of these are available. A lot of these are available as RaaS and SaaS, so robot as a service or software as a service. Bring them in, experience them, and as you start to see the productivity, as you start to see the gains, start investing more, and your labor morale, etc. All of that should also start to increase.
We heard the word flexibility at the top of this program, and we've heard it all the way throughout. That seems to be the big theme, starting with flexibility of labor, but also flexibility of systems and the entire operation. And just very great to hear all you guys talk about how this new technology, especially the idea of a warehouse execution system, which I've always been wondering what that is anyway. Thanks very much for educating me. This is all some great information. I want to thank you all, Ravish Sharma, Sid Malhotra, and Brian Reinhardt for this great presentation. I also want to thank our audience as well for your attendance and your great questions. There's a couple of links right there on the screen for you to get more information about both gray, orange, and high robotics. That information also will be sent to all registrants of this webinar, so don't worry about having to copy it down. Anyway, once again, Ravish, Sid, and Brian, thank you so much. Thank you, audience. Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you.